of the CEWIL PD committee, Erin Kaipanen at the University of Calgary, who has largely led us in coordinating today's session behind the scenes, Bruce Wilson at Redeemer University, Natalie Roper at Concordia, and Robin Ludi at the University of British Columbia. This is a webinar presented by CEWIL Canada's Professional Development Committee to all members, and also to many associations and individuals beyond who have also been invited today. Welcome to you all. We hope to provide supportive information around one of the work-integrated learning definitions we haven't delved into in great detail yet as a CEWIL community, and at a time when it might be more applicable as we explore new and virtual opportunities for students within our local communities and beyond, and that is service learning. Today's event was developed with the remote student in mind, as well as with empathy for our nonprofit and small business partners, given the challenges they're working through as our world changes so quickly. Service learning, also to give you some background, keeps reflective practice on a variety of topics at the heart, and in particular, community engagement, social justice, and true reciprocity between institutions and community. To share their vast experience, knowledge, and considerations around service learning is a group of colleagues from institutions right across our country who will form today's panel. We do want to acknowledge that we've gone solely with institutional perspectives today. We will follow up at some point in the future with another PD event on service learning, and community partners included in that as well, as their voice is equally as important. I'm thrilled to introduce you to our panelists today, who in geographic order from west to east are Rihanna Nagel, Community Engaged Learning Coordinator at the University of Victoria, Gillian Kemp, Manager Experiential Learning at MacEwan University, Kelly Hollingshed, Community Engaged Learning Coordinator at Western University, and Sarah King, Director of Experiential Education at the University of New Brunswick. Most of you by now are experts as being Zoom attendees, but for your viewing pleasure, you may wish to do the following. Switch to speaker view from the icon at the top of your screen, or switch to side-by-side view similarly. Please go ahead as participants on today's call and introduce yourself in the chat window. Please let us know your name and institution so that we can identify who's with us. And finally, if you'd like to save the chat thread, click on the bottom right corner of that window. We will be recording this presentation for sharing with other CEWIL members who were not able to attend, or those who would like to engage in this in an ongoing way. And if you happen to experience any technical issues, please place those in the chat window as well. We plan to have time for a few questions at the end. Please use the Q&A feature at the very bottom of your screen to let us know your questions. You may address that to the appropriate individual or to all the panelists. And at the end of the session, we'll make time for questions and I will curate those. Since we have 4 panelists, they may choose to pass on a question if they feel their voice has already been heard. And with this, I would like to pass the floor to our panelists to provide a summary. We will begin geographically in the West, and I'll hand the floor to Rihanna Nagel and be back for questions. Enjoy your time.
Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here today. I'm very pleased about participating in the WIL network, and I'm thrilled to be able to share the voice of community service learning today. I'm going to share my screen because it will help me stay focused in what I have to say. And I look forward to your questions. So, community service learning. Who am I? I'm Rihanna Nagel, as was said, and I coordinate community engaged learning. Those are my kids in that tree on the Cowichan River on Vancouver Island. I always like to include pictures of them in presentations where I potentially might get nervous because it makes me feel at home. So this is a beautiful map called the Coming Home Map that was created by a scholar in the US. Her name has slipped me right now, but it is a map of Indigenous place names. And given that this is a pan-Canadian talk, I just wanted to recognize that we're from all over this beautiful country, and that there are Indigenous relations with this whole land, and they're reflected in language and practices, and they're historical and they're present. And here is the University of Victoria from a bird's eye view. There's a ring, as you see, around the university. See if I can Yeah, so see this ring around the university. So often when we talk about community engaged learning or community service learning or work integrated learning, we talk about getting outside the ring. But that's interesting in this concept because in this context, because we're getting outside the ring, but we're inside our homes. It's quite a bit different. Just to put things into context here, for the type of work that the Community Engaged Learning Office at UVic supports, looking at different forms of work integrated learning. So we support service learning, applied research projects, field placements, field experiences, and project-based coursework. And to a certain degree, entrepreneurship, though we have a very independent and staffed business faculty. So they're able to support a lot of that work on their own. And I put a little star beside service learning because we also have a history of co-op supporting service learning at UVic. And I think this really speaks to something that I'm really feel inspired about, is that the practitioners and all the people who participate in the different types of work integrated at UVic do tend to come together a lot to share experiences and to share resources and what have you. So I'm pleased that that's happening, and I'm excited about these conversations for that same reason. So this is what we consider to be our spectrum of community engaged learning. And where we see community service learning is in the parts of the spectrum that would be considered involve, collaborate, or co-create. And as we go closer to co-create, it's not that it's better than any other place on the spectrum, but it means we're going to higher levels of engagement and more complexity and the reciprocity of those relationships. And of course, when we talk traditionally about community service learning, we're often talking about students in place, and a lot of their learning happens from the lived experience of simply being present and participating in a particular organization or business's work. But then, so we hit COVID, and we've got to finish the semester remotely. We've got to organize for summer 2020, organize for remote fall 2020. I put these happy students on the side there, this format of the slide, because it sort of contradicts the frightening nature of this all. So many questions come up. What happens to our relationships? How can we expect faculty who are already feeling so overwhelmed to take this on? How do we ensure equity for students who don't have equal access to technology or to internet, or who are in different places, or who, there's so many factors there. How do we communicate amidst such uncertainty and with so many layers of bureaucracy within our institutions? And how do we navigate a widespread of emotional responses from intense fear to frustrated anger? So lots going on there. So one of the ways that we responded was within our learning and teaching support and innovation division. We first created what we called our summer team. So this was our team responsible of supporting the teaching going online. Of course, it's no longer our summer team. We have to rename. But within that team, we have an experiential learning team. And my colleague, Meg Thompson from Co-op at UVic is working with me on that team to support faculty with experiential learning. And community service learning, of course, is included within that. And then we also have a fairly active and supportive community engagement and partnerships executive committee, of which I'm a part, and that has been a great support as well in navigating these different issues. So what do we need to do? Well, primarily we need to focus on learning and learners. And to do so, we need to be creating some solid alignment between what we want students to learn, the things we're going to do to help them learn, and the ways we're going to assess them. And within that, critical reflection is the bridge between these different activities. And the experiential activity is one of our instructional strategies. And we have, of course, different contexts. We don't just have the context of the university and the learner, we have the context of the community. And in these particular times, the context of the community, of course, is all over the place. Some community is really seeking to work with the university, and others just simply don't have the resources right now to do so and really need to focus on keeping their organizations alive. But if we go back to that aspect of critical reflection, which is really, as I said, that bridge, And I like someone said this, that the reflection is the hyphen in service learning. Of course, we don't use the hyphen in service learning much here in Canada, but I really like that because I think it's really relevant. But some really key models have been developed over the years to support this critical reflection. So I think we can really rely on those and support faculty in keeping those present as we go forward. And we have done that, and it's been really quite supportive to create that solid frame and to create more structure in what is quite a chaotic situation, really. So what I've found is that in these times of uncertainty, we've created more structure probably than we normally would in these experiences. So, the models of DEAL, which is was created by Ash and Clayton, and that is to describe, to examine from the personal perspective, the professional perspective, and the academic perspective, and then to articulate that learning. So what has the student learned? How did they learn it? And what are they going to do with that learning? Similarly, we have the what, so what, now what, and then 5 C's. There's so many models. But there are also ways that we can, with our online technologies, get quite creative with reflection. And so that's something that we've been supporting faculty with a lot, because as I said, reflection is the hyphen in service learning. So that's a really important factor, as much as the factor of the experience with community. And then focusing on the relationships and reciprocity. So there were a lot of important learnings, particularly when in end of March, around relationships and reciprocity. One of which was about creating respectful pauses. So when it was recognized that there was not the capacity, the time, the energy to focus on hosting students anymore in placements, there really was an emphasis on then giving a respectful pause, either from the project or what have you, even for the relationship. Some people just needed some time and space, and then having that strong relationship that then you can pick up later on. And this, not surprisingly, most faculty, that's the way they work in their relationships, but in some cases it required some mentoring to encourage those respectful pauses. Another area was around communication. So how do we communicate in these different levels of bureaucracy, and when there's so much changing every day, we have a new message about how things are going to look, and organizations have different priorities, as do ourselves. So what I found in this communication was really, while of course we have our official letters and language that we use from our institutions, what meant the most to our community partners was bringing the human into the ways that we were responding to and communicating with community partners. So for example, when I sent a letter to all of our community partners, letting them know where we were at and checking in to make sure they were all right and all of these kinds of things, I included this poem instead of, just to add a little bit of love to the whole thing. And the community partners really did appreciate that. So I think it's important to keep that humanity in these communications. And then part of that is to listen to what's desired and what's needed. So in some cases, a lot of our community partners just really wanted us to be present. They didn't know what they wanted the university to participate in yet at that time, or how students could be involved in their work, but they wanted us to attend their meetings and their brainstorming sessions, to be present and to be ready when the time came to work with students. So that through our community engaged learning office, that of course required a lot of time and energy, but it was well worth it, and it provided the bridge so that faculty have been able to continue or to build new projects, either in the summer or moving towards the fall. And of course, I always like this one, although my husband said that he had never heard it before, which was shocking to me, which is the keep it simple SMARTY, which used to be stupid, but I don't think that's very nice. And so it sounds extremely simple, but it needs to be reiterated over and over again, that we just need to keep things as simple as possible right now. So an example of some great work that has been happening is this field school from Cam Owens in our Department of Geography. And he was meant to go to Northern Europe to run an urban sustainability field school. Of course, that's not possible right now, but he was able to bring that experience home and to support urban sustainability in our region by working with 3 different organizations in our region, and students doing various projects, whether they be lit reviews or interviewing folks or creating infographics. And He's had great feedback from his students and his community partners, and he's actually very surprised in that the engagement online has been very strong, in some cases stronger than in other renditions of this course. And he was still able to keep in some of those aspects from afar. So here you'll see folks who he was going to be connecting with and students were going to be working with in Copenhagen, which is an organization called Cycling Without Age. And so they got on one day and did a virtual conversation and did a tour of Copenhagen on their cycling experience. So we talked about sharing some key lessons. I mean, there's so many lessons right now. But don't stick a square peg in a round hole. Alignment is key. The learning experience in the context, the community, and the learning needs. And it can really help to focus on the intended learning outcomes to keep the frame solid, and also to focus on the community interests and needs. And I should say, when we talk about community partners, we'll be talking about employers as well. We tend to use that language interchangeably. So yeah. Should have said that before. Another thing is that there are a number of brave early adopters out there who have done some incredible work, and they can provide so much inspiration for others. So part of our roles, I think, in offices like my own is sharing those stories and providing some space so that people can learn from one another. Respectful responsiveness, communication, as I said, to be human, being present, KISS. And as I said, things are more structured now than they sometimes are. Sometimes in these experiences, we provide a lot of space for students to sort of let loose, and then we slowly will pull them into, with that reflection, to strengthen their learning. But these experiences tend to be a little bit more pre-baked or cookie cutter. And that is what's needed at this time to provide, for most students, to provide that sense of security to work from. So thank you very much. I hope we can continue the conversation in other spaces, and I really look forward to hearing from our other presenters. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
And I'm up next, and I will share my screen because I too need to be kept on track and use my PowerPoint to do that. Okay, so I'm Gillian Kemp from MacEwan University. Have I managed to share? No, I haven't. Push the button to say share, Gillian. That will do it. Now am I sharing? Okay, great. Thanks for the nods. All right. So I'm building off of Rihanna's work and talking specifically about the project-based. But who are we? We're MacEwan University, and we're talking COVID-proof community service learning today. Oh, and I want to hit my start button so I know how long I'm talking to you. All righty. So MacEwan context, downtown university, 18,000 students, give or take, mostly in degree programs, some in certificate and diploma programs, grew from a community college, strong experiential learning history at this school. All sorts of different varieties, everything named by Rihanna. 7,000-ish placements a year going on here. COVID disaster to that really decimated the placement style of experiential learning, but I'm not going to focus on that right now. What I will talk about more is our community service learning, because that's the piece that hadn't started when I came on board at MacEwan, and in 2018 there was really nothing tracked or supported, but we started, and this past semester we had 30 courses, about 1,400 students. So that gives you an idea of volume. None of those winter semester projects went south. We got them all done. So that's what I want to focus on today. So, but a disclaimer, we use the term community engaged learning rather than community service learning, so I'm probably going to flip back and forth. But I do want to tell you what the sort of structure around what we call community engaged learning. It's course-based, it's credit-based, has community partners with real problems. It has defined academic deliverables that usually include a rationale to explain how the course material was used to solve the community problem or to work on the opportunity. So that's part of what we call reflection. We also unpack the personal side of reflection and focus on professional competencies and career outcomes through surveys. Generally speaking, done in teams. So there you are, quick context on that. And why I say this is COVID proof is when you take a look at the placement beside project, the big piece is that the project students are only ever visiting their partner site. And this is where we've slipped into that virtual way of communicating very, very quickly and easily. So general structure of how we create these community engaged learning projects. We normally, this is, obviously with 30 different courses, they're not all exactly like this, but this is just a general. So we start with an introductory meeting where there's needs assessment going on. The academic deliverables out of that tend to be problem statements, preliminary research that's submitted, whether it goes to the community partner or to the professor, sometimes both. Then we have some sort of touch point in the middle designed, and that one usually is the students have enough under their belt at that point that they're starting to come up with ideas and action plans. Then the whole project wraps up at the end of campus, at the end of the semester, usually on campus for a presentation. So you can see this structure of 3 touch points with the community partner versus a student being on site meant the flip to using virtual was quite easy. Next. I'm throwing this slide up for you just so you can see that we use this system, if we want to call it that, across the spectrum. We sort of level up the competencies over time, and as the students are hitting their 4th year, they're very independent, high autonomy, they're working usually very consultant-like, whereas in 1st year, we're managing it a great deal more, it's more classroom-based. So enough said about that. So I want to talk you through how our experiential learning facilitators work with faculty to go through this process. So that's too big, so we're going here. All right, workflow. So our ELVs usually work with the professor first, sit down, talk about those learning outcomes, figure out what that translates to in terms of real world challenges or opportunities. So that's the first thing to do. Can solidly connect those learning outcomes to what would be something of value to a community partner. So my 1st year music students created curated playlists for specific audiences and spaces. That's a 1st year project. 4th year project, market research, say, students are doing custom market research for a small nonprofit or small business and providing them with market intelligence. So that's just some examples. So once we've defined what would make a good project, we proceed with creating what we call a request for partnership that we send out to community partners. That's going to have details around what kinds of projects are appropriate and any requirements. When's it going to start? When's it going to end? What are the deliverables, etc., so that our community partners are signing on. This is what Rihanna was talking about in terms of its cookie cutter. We are not to manage this. We're managing what that connection is between the community partner and the course. So once we have our community partners, we start shoving these pieces and parts together. We've got our professors, we've got our students, we've got our community partners. And what the ELVs do is they're kind of the glue that binds. They are managing the relationships in all of that. They are going into the classroom now, also supporting around the professional competency piece. So they're introducing the partners, they are the liaison between, but they're also supporting the instructors, if so desired, on things like teamwork or communication, presentations, those sorts of things. And that helps get a better product to the community partner. If we're building those skills within our students and we're talking about those skills, then they also know that those are the skills and competencies that they're developing when they go out and talk about this in an interview somewhere. So we bring it all together. The students work on their deliverables. And as you can see in the slide, student impacts, career insight is a huge piece. For the community partners, it's capacity development. So who does what? Our ELVs are all about the community partner recruitment and managing those relationships and helping with competencies. And that leaves the instructors to be able to focus on the academic side and to do the grading. We don't touch grading. Don't make me do grading. Okay, last thing that I want to talk about in terms of trying to COVID-proof our experiential learning is our pilot with Ripen. So plug for Ripen. We're just starting into it, but the reason that we're starting into using Ripen is because it was built with this model in mind of projects and teams and partners being put together and communicating virtually. So they've already been thinking about this for years. So we're happy to hop on board right now and say, okay, let's find out what you've learned about communicating in virtual project management. So we're on there for that. We'll see how that goes. The other piece that's appealing for us is the access to a bigger database. We have community partners and we really haven't sort of run out of community partners, but we know that we're going to need more if we're going to continue to grow. So remembering that we went from 0 to 1,400 students in 2 years, like we want to be able to continue to grow even with COVID. So this is another way to access community partners. So that's how we've COVID-proofed experiential learning, project-based at MacEwan. I'll leave others to talk about placement. And that's it for me. Muting.
Great, thanks, Gillian. I'll also share my screen just as soon as yours is down. Perfect. Okay, so thank you for having me here today and to share our work. So my name's Kelly Hollingshead. I work in experiential learning at Western University in London, Ontario, as a community engaged learning coordinator for curricular programs. So in this role, I design and support courses with the CEL pedagogy and manage a robust network of community partners in the London area, the local London area. I've been fortunate to build a community in the CEL space, both provincially and nationally, as my roles as part of the steering committee of the Ontario Community Service Learning Network and as a co-chair of the caucus CEL Community of Practice. So, I'm really happy to be here. So let's get going here. Okay, so before I jump in, I'll just give a little bit of context that Western anticipates a mixed model in the fall in which some of our courses or parts of them will be delivered virtually and others face-to-face. I understand that CEWIL's focus is curricular service learning, so I'll mention that I'll be sharing about curricular, co-curricular, and global CEL today. And at Western, we call community engaged learning, not service learning. So CEL is a central office at Western and part of the experiential learning unit within student experience. Curricular and co-curricular CEL represent a significant part of the experiential learning framework at Western. We have curricular CEL in every faculty, so this includes 40 courses of all sizes. It's about 2,400 students a year. An exciting addition this year was City Studio London. For those who don't know, City Studio was pioneered in Vancouver in 2011 and has been adapted across Canada. So City Studio London launched in 2019 as a partnership between the City of London, 5 post-secondary institutions, and the London community. So the collaboration co-creates experiential learning projects aligned with the city's strategic plan and embeds the projects into the course curricula. We also have 1 to 2 week global experiences at 3 points in the year. The majority of these are co-curricular, but we have supported curricular global experiences in the past. A huge kickoff to our co-curricular programming is an event called Orientation Serves, which is embedded in our orientation week. And then Western Serves Network is our year-long mechanism for co-curricular community engaged learning. We have 4 staff that lead these programs centrally, so that partnership building can be long-term and we can limit the number of people making requests to community. So this work does not come without its challenges during a pandemic, as it turns out, and others have mentioned a few. And so not surprisingly, some of the challenges are the same at Western. So placement-based opportunities, this has been mentioned. So the majority of our co-curricular experiences and some of our curricular experiences are placement-based, where the service is completed at the partner site, as opposed to project-based experiences where the final deliverable is completed outside of the organization. So placement-based opportunities are of course difficult to do right now, whereas project-based opportunities can be more easily shifted online, eliminating the need for students to be physically on site and for partners to be physically on site. So an example of this is Orientation Serves, which is a large placement-based event involving thousands of students during orientation programming to kick off co-curricular CEL, as I mentioned on the last slide. So it's difficult to plan for how we might return to supporting partners during large-scale events such as Serves, given that we don't know for sure what the distancing restrictions will be in the fall. So gatherings of 10 people will look very different than gatherings of 50, and logistically, there's challenges getting students to the partnering site in large numbers. And even if some of these restrictions are loosened as society trends towards recovery, hopefully, will students and community partners feel comfortable collaborating in these spaces right away? A challenge for both curricular and co-curricular CEL is that we spend a large portion of the summer semester planning for programs that take place throughout the academic year. So we actually don't run programming in the summer. We use this as our planning time. So of course, an integral component to this is connecting with our partners to learn about their needs and how we can support them through the year. Understandably, many organizations are adjusting to the new normal and we are experiencing reduced capacity due to the circumstances. So this makes it difficult for our partners to predict their future needs at this time. And with reduced capacity, they may not be in a position to mentor a student group come the fall. Another challenge in the curricular sphere is that there's additional pressures on faculty shifting their courses online, and this may influence their decision to incorporate a CEL component in their course or not. So based on the timing of the pandemic, we rapidly shifted our CEL courses online at the end of the winter term and saw that curricular CEL can be successfully delivered online. Because of the success and the ability to offer project-based CEL online, many faculty have indicated their intent to offer the CEL component in the fall and winter. However, there's still many considerations with a mixed model, such as equal access for international students, different time zones, that sort of thing. So we're hopeful that we can work together to anticipate contingency needs proactively and offer a similar suite of online CEL courses, or sorry, everything's online now, a similar suite of CEL courses as the years pass to deepen our students' learning and support our partners during these uncertain times. In the global portfolio, the main challenge is that travel is precarious at this time. Western sanctioned international travel for all students has been canceled until December 31st of 2020. So we're working to maintain our relationships with our global partners despite travel restrictions. So many of the communities we've worked with for 10 plus years, and some of our partners have even suspended programming until September of 2021. So again, due to the time that it takes to, planning our global experience program, we've made the decision to flip these global experiences to local for our February 2021 experiences. So some best practices moving forward at Western, really focusing on that project-based CEL as others have mentioned. So if CEL courses or opportunities have placement-based service, we're encouraging and supporting faculty and staff to consider ways in which students might engage in other types of CEL opportunities. So for example, creating an educational deliverable to meet a community partner's identified need. So an example could be research assessment or evaluation requested by the community partner, creating information sharing products such as social media content or print material, assisting our partners with their shift online. And something that we're exploring with City Studio is how to support COVID recovery projects aligned with the city's strategic plan. For placement-based opportunities, when it's safe to do so, allocating a budget for equipment such as gloves, hand sanitizers, masks, a small budget for CEL. So we hope to explore this budget in that way. For both online and face-to-face opportunities, consulting with the institution's legal team regarding liability and risk management, recognizing that there's risks with online delivery with all partners and specifically considerations with vulnerable populations. And of course, face-to-face opportunities come with risks of falling ill. And all of our planning being transparent in communication with community partners that the situation may change and working together to anticipate contingency needs proactively. Recognizing that the online environment, new territory for some, so supporting partners to engage online. So for example, technology support to demonstrate how to use computers for senior participants and ensuring compatibility between the institution's online platforms and the organization's online platforms. We're extremely aware of pressures on our partners right now and the potential for burnout, so really leading into our model of centralized support so we avoid multiple asks to our community partners. And then I'll just end on a positive note here, recognizing that CEL is really an engaging, transformative pedagogy that is possible in an online format. Really with reciprocity at its core, it's a mechanism to help our students thrive through developing their skills, resumes, and networks, through reflection, deepening their understanding of how their discipline connects to the global health crisis, feeling the connectedness that we're all craving while physically distant, feeling a sense of belonging and purpose through contributing to society and working with our community partners. And in an online format, there's also really intriguing possibilities for engaging students in service projects in their home communities and sharing back, really igniting rich dialogue in the online classroom. And there's so much more. And this is all while supporting our community during this pertinent time. So I'm getting really excited, so I better stop there or I'll go over my time. So I'm going to stop share here and just thank you again. And I'm happy to take any questions during Q&A.
Great, it's my turn. I am not sharing my screen. I did not prepare any slides, so I'm going rogue. But my name is Sarah King. I'm the Director of Experiential Education at the University of New Brunswick, managing both our campuses in Fredericton and St. John. And I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. Either works for me. So I was going to just talk a little bit about sort of the unique context for community engaged learning in New Brunswick and at the University of New Brunswick for COVID. I did my PhD here at UNB, finished in January of 2018, and took this role in July of 2018. And my work looks at how universities in Atlantic Canada educate for civic engagement. And so that community and civic impact is really important to me. And of course, experiential learning emerged through my research as one of the strongest pedagogies to support civic development, both of students and of their communities. And I focus on the Atlantic Canadian region because A, that's where I'm from and that's what I know best. And B, because as I point out an awful lot in our region often gets left out of a whole lot of different things. And so it was really important to me to sort of focus on that region. And two sort of key ideas that emerged from my dissertation, specifically when I was talking about the Atlantic Canadian region, but I think it should apply to any region, is this idea of eliminating a deficit-based approach and sort of focusing on a vision of what's possible. And also recognizing that opportunities should be grounded in the historical, cultural, economic, and political context of where you are. Eve Tuck and Marcia McKenzie talk about this idea of sort of being place conscious when we do research, but also when we do experiential learning as well. And that's really important to me, and are two of the sort of values I try to highlight in the work we do in experiential education at the University of New Brunswick, whether that is in more sort of placement-based will, like co-op, what are we doing for our region through our co-op endeavors, but then of course is front of mind when we talk about community engaged and community service learning. So when COVID-19 hit, these were already sort of the core values that were driving what we were doing, and really led us to be able to think carefully and critically and quickly, I guess, all of those things about how we might transition what we were doing. So I'm going to talk specifically about two different programs that we're running this summer, and sort of how those were impacted by COVID, but what in some ways opportunities COVID presented to us. So at UNB, most of our experiential learning is curricular. We focus really heavily on curricular experiential learning, but my office runs a summer work integrated learning program that is co-curricular, and it is a placement-based experiential learning that matches underrepresented students, so mostly students with financial need, but also LGBTQIA2S+ students, mature students, parents, caregivers, students with disabilities, international students, Indigenous students, with opportunities for a placement largely in the community sector. Though some of our placements also involve our small and medium business community, but largely in the community sector. So this is our second year running this program. Last summer we had about 30 placements with about 23 different partners. And it went really well, and my goals for this year were to increase it. I hoped we'd have 40 placements and we would bring on some new partners. And that one of my other goals was that we would not be at the end of February trying to launch a summer program, that we would be very organized and things would be up to speed. And on a related note, we also launched an Orbis management platform this year. So on March 10th, I was ready to launch our summer work integrated learning program. So completely failed at reaching my goal of being ready in January to launch this program. And then, of course, so I did my initial outreach to employers and partners and had started gathering some ideas. And then the next week, of course, we all shift to remote. We don't really know what the rest of the winter term is going to look like. We certainly don't know what the summer term is going to look like. So we kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And it really wasn't until the 20th to really launch this program, which now I look upon, and on using my critical reflection skills, look upon as a benefit. it really gave our partners some time to think about what they could offer to a student in this context. And we shifted our perspective that those placements would have to happen remotely, recognizing that a lot of our students had left and had returned either out of province or out of country, and making sure they had access to those opportunities was really important to us. But what was really interesting, so I did some outreach to our partner list on the 27th of March, and by the 3rd of April, we had generated 65 new placements. So all of a sudden, organizations were in this sort of adrenaline mode of what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What can we do? And I think really sort of getting back to that vision of the possible, what is possible? And what a lot of our organizations found is actually we can take on students if they're remote, because we don't need to provide them with a computer. We don't need to provide them with workspace. We don't need to figure out where we're going to put them in these, offices, teeny offices a lot of our not-for-profit partners work in. And that was really exciting, and a lot of partners came on board. We actually have 24 new partners in that program that we didn't have last year, it was really exciting. And so I think, sort of the prompt for us in this conversation was, what are some of the best practices moving forward? And I think for me, this was a really good reminder to focus on that vision of the possible and to sort of frame that in a really appreciative, positive way. Not, oh my God, what has COVID done? But okay, what has COVID enabled us to do in some ways? Related to this, to these sort of frameworks that I use in developing our experiential ed, the idea about sort of grounding it in place and what our communities need, of course, and focusing on this vision of the possible. We're also launching, hopefully in the fall, probably now in the winter, an equity-centered experiential education initiative at UNB. And I have actually 2 students working partly for my office, but also partly for one of our community partners, which is the Fredericton Downtown Community Health Clinic, which is an initiative of our Faculty of Nursing and our provincial health authority, Horizon Health, that serves vulnerable and marginalized folks in our community. So folks with low or no income, those experiencing homelessness or near homelessness, those who use drugs, people who are in other ways fall through the cracks. Lots of newcomers and refugees who use that service. But they also act as a bit of a hub. They have a ton of partner organizations, of course, right? The Greener Village, which is one of our food banks, the Fredericton Community Kitchens, our Multicultural Association is really connected. So I actually have 2 students working this summer in placements for the Fredericton Health Center who are doing an opportunities map of what are more opportunities for experiential learning through this hub of the Fredericton Downtown Community Health Center. One of them is working in Mexico and one of them is working in Bhutan. And they are both able to work with this community partner they're both obviously both international students working from their home countries. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity. So I think that, I want to give us time for questions. So I'm going to sort of cut myself off a little bit there. I had all kinds of things to talk about course-based projects, but Gillian's already talked about those. And I had lots of logistic stuff, but Kelly's already talked about that. So I think, the 2 pieces for me that have really stuck with me through this crisis and what I hope I can continue to bring into my work are that looking for the possible, but making sure that those needs are really focused on where we are at right now. And so that political, social, cultural context we're in right now includes COVID. So instead of looking at it as this thing that's happened to us that we have to somehow overcome, my supervisor in a meeting today talked about not fitting what we try to do into our new reality, but trying to figure out how this new reality shapes what we can accomplish. And so those are the 2 pieces I think I'd like to leave with you folks, and then open it up for opportunities to chat and have questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to all 4 of you. It was really, really interesting to hear some themes in terms of challenges, but also some really unique things that you're doing that fit the opportunities that exist on your campus and in your campus's community. So thank you so much for that. The first question is for Kelly. Can you please expand on, and you mentioned legal concerns for CEL, on the scope of some of those legal concerns related to students?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So this actually came up in the Ontario Community Service Learning um, conversations a few times. We've been connecting bi-weekly in that group. There's about 45 of us that connect online bi-weekly, and so one of the topics that kept coming up was this risk management, right? And so I was part of the group a couple weeks ago, and it really had me thinking about, like, when we connect with partners online, what if someone clicks record, and not even thinking that that could be a violation of privacy? Or what if we're working with youth and we're tutoring online, and, like, do parents have to be present? Is there a new consent form for that, right? What if there's sensitive information being shared with marginalized populations, if we're working with marginalized populations and supporting that work? So thinking through everything that comes with online. Certainly it's not new, but it's new because CEL has been engaging in person, right? And having our students really immersed in the work. And so now when we're moving online, just thinking through those risks. And also in person. So if we have students working with the frontline workers, for example, and with COVID and falling ill. So just thinking through that as well. Do we offer those opportunities, or is that something that Western doesn't want to support? Not that they wouldn't want to support it, but is that somewhere where we want to go, right? With the risk of our students falling ill or our partners falling ill.
Thank you. The next question is actually for you as well, and whether you would be open to expanding just a little bit more on your curricular global initiatives that you mentioned.
Program is called, I'm just going to pull up our website so that I get our numbers right here. So our global community engaged learning program is called Impact Experience. We just had a name change. It used to be called Alternative Spring Break, and so we had a number of focus groups run last year, and the lead of that program is Kate Placid. I think she's on here today. And so we had a number of focus groups with students and partners and faculty to talk about the name, and we came upon a new name called Impact Experience. And so we run about 10 to 12 international programs a year. And so those happen at 3 points in the year. Our new fall reading week, I shouldn't call it new anymore. It's been around for 2 or 3 years now, new to me because I didn't have it as a student. And then our spring break, so in February, and then we have May experience as well, which are actually 2-week experiences. And so we have about 120 students in those programs every year, and we work with about 20 different partners. And our focus really is on fair trade learning, global citizenship, and ethical story sharing and community engagement. Those are kind of the core tenets of that work. One of our new experiences is actually engaging with an Indigenous community in Pine Ridge. So it was an Indigenous exchange. So our students actually traveled to Pine Ridge and learned from that community. And so that's been really exciting new partnership that we've had.
Thank you so much. This question is for Sarah. Could you please elaborate more about equity and experiential learning or WIL opportunities on your campus? I'm afraid most universities are not offering an inclusive model of WIL. Great question.
Yeah, really good question. It's definitely something that's been front of mind for me, and actually conversations we're just starting to have about fall. What does it look like if some of our students can return to campus and others don't, particularly in those placement-based models? So what if an employer says, well, this is happening in person, that limits the number of students who are able to have access to that opportunity. It's something we're thinking a lot about. I definitely wouldn't say, certainly equity is one of the core foundations of what we do. I'm sure everyone would say the same, and community engaged learning and service learning have that as a value at the core. But I think for me, one of the big questions related to equity that is coming up at the moment is access. And what do we do when, several of my colleagues raised this today, what about the access to technology to participate in virtual experiences? And we have heard from some students that that's not an option. Our university has used our equipment pool to provide technology to students who might have needed it. Particularly, that was more focused on the sort of end of winter semester, as everyone sort of had to leave campus really quickly and complete those courses in alternative delivery methods. But that is available to students. New Brunswick also has a provincial initiative, Future Ready New Brunswick, that provides funding for experiential learning, and equipment is one of the pieces that we can fund for students doing an experiential learning opportunity. Laptops were initially no-go for using that funding, because literally every student and partner would say, oh, I need a new laptop to be able to do this experience, and our funding wouldn't fall that far. But we also have Future Ready Wabanaki, which is a program specifically for Indigenous students, and they don't have those restrictions. Our Department of Education and Early Childhood Development has provided laptops, iPads, and this is where my knowledge of technology is complete, but I think they're called MiFi sticks, so that students can connect to internet through cell plans. That's all I've got, so don't ask me any more questions about them. But so sort of those pieces are front of mind for us, and we certainly would work with students on a case-by-case basis for those sort of equity needs. But for me, I think really thinking about access. And so no matter what, our university will announce on June 1 our plan for fall, and no matter what they announce, we will be looking, I think, at a hybrid model for experiential learning that will include opportunities for remote placements, because that is most equitable for our student body. But it's a really good question, and one I still need to think a lot more about, but how we uphold those values in a time when we could overly privilege certain groups of students. Well, I will say this, we're launching a program next week called Catalyst, which Kelly was speaking a little bit about, directly helps businesses with COVID recovery. So in New Brunswick, we are in the yellow phase of opening up, which means a lot of our businesses are open, but they all have to complete a really detailed operational plan so they can engage before they can reopen. So we have students, we're going to create these hubs of students who can work with businesses to help them do those operational plans, to help them pivot to online marketplaces, all kinds of things. And someone in our first steering committee meeting was like, well, these could be unpaid internships. And that was like a firm no. That's not on our cards at all. Students have to be compensated in some way, whether it's academic credit and or financial compensation. So anyway, I'm rambling. There's a lot of equity pieces that we are all juggling. But it's really front of mind right now to think about, what does this new reality, how does it exacerbate other forms of inequity that we have seen before, and how can we pivot to make sure we offer as many placements to students or opportunities to students as possible.
Thank you so much for that. I do have to tell you that we have been flooded with questions in the last few minutes, and looking at our clock, I am going to move to wrap up, but please know that I'm going to take these questions back to the Professional Development Committee as part of CEWIL and see what the best way moving forward is to get those questions answered, or to have them incorporated into an upcoming session. So thank you so much for your engagement. As well as I've said already, to all the panelists. Just a reminder that this has been recorded, and recordings are shared on the CEWIL website along with all past sessions that we've offered as well. So keep an eye out there for that recording to be posted. We know that this has been a rich learning opportunity, and hopefully a conversation that has just started, and we'll continue together to engage and explore CEWIL definitions of all different forms of will. We would like to wish everyone a safe summer and a safe semester. We're hoping to offer a third webinar related to will through COVID-19, focused on simulation and virtually simulated experiences. So please stay tuned for much more information to come, and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.